Gonna build a mountain from a little hill.
Hello folks, this is Best in Slot doing some post-Gamescom Planet Zoo coverage. Finally! I had a great week in Germany covering the game, big thanks to Frontier for inviting me along, and I thought you'd all appreciate my thoughts and opinions on the game now that I've had some time to reflect on the experience. Not only that, but we'll start off by summing up the new information we learned during Gamescom week. So let's get started. First of all, top priority, the new animals we played with at Gamescom. So this is the list. We saw a common ostrich. We saw a absolutely heartbreakingly adorable snow leopard. We saw the common warthog. We saw the layman's poison frog. We also saw a new tortoise in the Aldabra giant tortoise. We got our second snake of the game so far via the yellow anaconda. We got our first look at an arachnid via the Goliath bird-eater tarantula. And finally we also saw a titan beetle. Now these were all revealed in the Gamescom demo build that I got to play myself. But throughout the week we had 3 other animals revealed thanks to an IGN demo stream. Those were the Indian rhino, one that we got a really good look at. But a little image in the bottom right of that stream showed us 2 more animals, the Indian elephant and the okapi. Finally, we had 1 more animal confirmed by a Gamescom journalist who saw a different build than the other streamers did, and that was we got confirmation of tapirs in the game. Awesome. And that means in total 11 new animals were added to the roster in the last week, bringing our confirmed animal roster up to the mid-30s, which is a pretty crazy number given there's still 2 months until the game releases. I've got a little bet going on in the Planet Zoo Discord that the final roster will end up with over 60 animals, and I'm feeling pretty confident about that these days. It does look like we're going to get some recolors and small remodels, as shown by say the 2 elephants and now the 2 tortoises, but I think that's okay as long as it isn't stretched out to giving us 9 tigers or 284 agoutis like the 2013 edition of Zoo Tycoon did. These simpler redesigned animals aren't taking up slots for other animals, which I think is usually the main complaint about them. They require substantially less work than a new animal would, so it's either a few simple remodels or just no animals extra at all, and obviously, some basic remodels is probably a better thing. As for new features, well, we learned about a couple of new ones at Gamescom as well. The biggest one for me personally, and one I did try out myself on my stream, is the existence of walk-through exhibits. Using visitor gates, you can let your park visitors walk through exhibits filled with animals and get real up close with them. The animals you put in an exhibit will determine whether your visitors are happy about it though. Lemurs, peafowls, tortoises, we tried them all out, no problem whatsoever. But you stick a warthog in there and you're going to end up with some very unhappy screaming guests. We also saw just how intricate the building system actually is. I didn't really get long enough to build much myself, but if you want to see the amazing stuff that can be built piece by piece, that's right, I said it. I'd recommend checking out Rudy Rencamel's channel. I'm going to link it down below. He's a great guy, but more importantly, he's got some insane building skills and has really already showed off some of what Planet Zoo is going to be capable of. To sum up the other stuff quickly, we saw park staff using animal structures like wooden bridges, animals suffering in the snow and the way the snow gathers on buildings, and we got confirmation from Frontier themselves that animals will grow gradually over time depending on their size stat. That's about it on the mechanics side. I think we know most of the mechanics in the game at this point in time. We haven't managed to try out the train and the Jeep tour and stuff like that, but we'll see what goes on down the line. I've not gone through all the other streamers' work yet, so there may be some tidbits I missed, but I do think that's the major information. Tidbits is such a great word, and it's pretty exciting stuff. Now, let's move on to my thoughts about the game based on my personal experience with it. It is worth remembering, of course, that this was an alpha build, not the beta, but an alpha. I'm going to mention some issues, some of which I think probably won't change before release, and some of which were probably a result of just an early build of the game. By and large, my experience with Planet Zoo was immensely positive. I realise I did say the same kind of thing about Evolution last year, but I did have triple the time with Planet Zoo, and I didn't have developer supervision. I'm also a much more critical game player than I was this time last year, so hopefully these thoughts are worth a little something. The game, generally speaking, handled really well. I was a little bit apprehensive after finding Planet Coaster somewhat obtuse at launch, which I think was a pretty big complaint, but after a little time with Planet Zoo, those problems pretty much disappeared. I will say it's a lot to take in initially. Heard that before. There's a lot going on, and for new players, particularly those who didn't play Planet Coaster, I think the game is going to be a teeny little bit overwhelming initially. There are just so many menus. That said, I didn't play Planet Coaster much at all, and I still got the hang of Planet Zoo pretty quickly. And that was without a real in-game tutorial system. We had these pop-ups, but I ignored them all. The final build you all play should do a better job of guiding players through the early stages of the campaign. We didn't play the campaign, we didn't play the tutorial levels that we know were going to be there. I did also suffer from some lag and UI issues, particularly in my third and final session after a game crash, but I think they're going to be squashed before the game launches anyway. There's no guarantee of that, of course, but given the fundamentals of the game are very much in place, I think a lot of the next couple of months is going to be spent on optimization, etc. The upcoming beta will also act as a huge quality assurance test that really should help Frontier stamp out any remaining niggles. Also a great word. My only other big problem is the pathing and barrier system. The variety of options given is great. You really do get immense control over the barriers in particular, and people are going to make some great looking zoos. I just found the placement of both, the paths in particular, to be oddly difficult. Maybe I just suck, but I found it a little bit finicky. Again, this is an alpha build and something that could well improve over time, but it did stand alone as my only real problem with the building aspect of the game, so it's worth bringing up. The rest of the game was pretty perfect despite the alpha build though. The animals look and sound fantastic, and generally speaking, their animations were on point already. The way the cubs play and stuff like that just looked really cool. The only one that had problems really was the climbing mechanics for the lemurs, so it clearly needs a little bit more love. The animals had personality and they felt like the stars of the show that they should. I did feel their breeding was a little bit excessive. They were all too happy to push out some bebés and, get down. And it should be held back a little bit more than it is currently. It was all too easy for me to shove out 100 baby wolves without even wanting to. Now, given how difficult it is to breed animals in zoos, this could probably be tempered down a little bit. It is worth mentioning on this though that the conservation aspects of the game weren't in yet from what I could see, so I couldn't send my animals to other zoos or out into the wild, and I think that would make the breeding a much bigger problem than it likely will be upon release. If you've got 100 new baby wolves, I can send them out to different zoos. Who wouldn't want a baby wolf? Everybody would, exactly. Finally on the animals, which again, generally speaking, looked amazing, the babies are unbelievably adorable. The baby ostriches and snow leopards in particular. I've got to say the baby ostriches were my favourite animal in the entire thing. I know some people are disappointed by the lack of eggs. We did try this out and eggs definitely aren't in the game. Frontier did confirm that there's no current things to say on eggs or no current plans for eggs or something. It doesn't really bother me personally if I'm honest, but hey, that's something else that could potentially change before launch. I don't think it will. I don't think that's going to happen. I wouldn't get your hopes up about that. But yeah, there you go. The terrain management felt pretty great. The exhibit building, it offered tons of control. The water placement was really cool. You fill out these holes and then you can determine how much water you want to pour into there. That all felt really good, really creative. It was a little bit annoying trying to find this one bit of grass you needed to get rid of to make an animal 100% happy, but other than that it gave us realistic exhibits that really do let you do whatever you want. And it's worth remembering your animals don't need to be in an ideal exhibit to be happy. I had warthogs, lemurs and tortoises all living together in a single exhibit happily. It was really cool actually. The piece-by-piece building is a little confusing at first, but it is immensely powerful and is going to lead to some incredible zoos, it really is. We've already seen people build some amazing stuff, and when the game ends up in the hands of hundreds of thousands of players, I think people are just going to be blown away by the level of control and creativity. It's not really something we get in games at all these days, and I think it's something a lot of people are really excited about. This piece-by-piece building and the animals themselves are absolutely the two main focuses of Planet Zoo, and it definitely shows. The management aspect though is there. I couldn't play with it as much as I would have liked, but it is certainly far deeper than Jurassic World Evolution's management. Basically, I think Planet Zoo is going to let you focus on the aspect of the game you enjoy the most. The management of the zoo, the building of the exhibits and the fancy buildings, or the animals themselves, or any mix of the three. And I think you could, in theory, kind of somewhat neglect some of those aspects. You don't need to do all the big fancy builds if you don't want to. You can have quite a hands-off approach to the management if you want to. You probably can't entirely neglect your animals, but you definitely don't need to make their exhibits perfect. So you get a lot of control in just how you want to tackle the game personally. Also, P still doesn't open the path tool. It does pause the game, so I guess I can forgive them. Maybe. Finally, the terrariums were pretty cool, albeit a little limited like we thought. The lack of free roaming movement actually bothered me less than I thought it would. I was a little bit annoyed about that, I will admit. I will say that the terrarium camera needs to be able to zoom in much closer than it currently does. It's just too hard to see the animals right now. But I do like that they felt like a real part of my zoo, and they could breed, they had needs, the animals had to be delivered, there was a separate page for their adoption, stuff like that. I am being a little nitpicky with the negatives here, but I do think they're worth mentioning. Whether these problems are fixed at release is not really relevant to this video. This is just my experience of the alpha build, what I liked and what I didn't. If you're worried about any of them in particular, you can always wait to see how the beta handles when it comes out in just under a month's time. But I do want to stress that despite a foible here and there, I really enjoyed Planet Zoo and really found myself wanting to get back to the game every single time one of my stream sessions ended. I'm trying very hard to be realistic. I know I overhyped Evolution based on my LA play session, but I do think Planet Zoo has the potential to be a genuinely great game that clearly reflects the increased development time it's been given, as well as the control afforded to it by being a PC-only title. Whether in the end it properly stacks up to Zoo Tycoon 2 does remain to be seen. After all, Zoo Tycoon 2 has had over a decade, well over a decade of modding to help it along. But as a base game, I'm confident in saying it's easily the best zoo game we've had in years and years, and any concerns people had on the basis of Frontier's Zoo Tycoon 2013 are basically unfounded at this point. Essentially, if you've always wanted a Zoo Tycoon 2 sequel, I think you can afford to be excited. I think you can afford to get hyped up. If nothing substantial happens between now and release, like maybe the campaign turns out to be terrible, or they randomly kill half the animal roster for some reason, then Planet Zoo is, in my opinion, likely to be the game we've been waiting all these years for. And I said this about Jurassic World Evolution in relation to JPOG. I know I did, but I'm trying to be more critical. The beta's out in a month either way, and even if you're avoiding the pre-order, there's going to be a ton of new content out there from people all over the globe, myself included. You can check it out and make a more informed decision then. I'm just saying that personally, I'm pretty damn excited. I don't really get as hyped for many games these days, tending to wait for reviews and release and stuff like that. Having played Planet Zoo for, over 3 hours, just over 3 hours at this point in time, it's a decent chunk of time, and I really, really enjoyed the game. It does need fixing up here and there. It's a little bit finicky at times, the UI is a little bit annoying at times, the barrier placement's a little bit annoying at times, but the animals are great, the terrain building is great, the building is great. I don't know. We'll have to see how the rest of the game plays out, but I'd be excited, personally. Anyway, we're going to end it there. Thanks a bunch for joining me and for all the positive comments on my Planet Zoo stream, especially that first one. I really appreciated them. They warmed my cold, dead heart right up. If you did enjoy this video, please consider throwing me a like and also a subscribe to be kept up to date with Planet Zoo as we build up to the beta, and of course, I will be covering the beta itself in lots and lots of detail. I suspect we'll maybe get a little less information for the next 3 or 4 weeks as we build up to that beta, but who knows. Thank you for joining me, cheers much love as always, bye bye. Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want to help support me a little bit more, you can do so at patreon.com/bestinslot. There's a link in the description down below. Every little really does help in times like these, but it's not at all expected, and by just watching the video you've already helped me out massively, and it makes you a pretty cool person, so well done you. Thanks for joining me either way, I'll see you next time.